I want to give a special shout out to all my patrons, my Bibliosprand, Bibliohaulers, and Bibliomancers. Thank you so much for supporting my hobby and passion even more. It means so much to me. Hi everyone, Petrik here. Today's video will be the first kind of video that I do on my channel, and it will be a book unhaul. I'm not a fan of unhauling books, even though I know that I must do it sometime, but I am not a fan of unhauling books. But spaces are limited. If it's up to me, I will keep all the books that I ever received, but that is not possible unless I have a personal library, and well, hopefully one day I can achieve that. But in order to have more spaces for more future books to come to my place, I have to make some sacrifices, and that means I have to unhaul some books. And today I will unhaul 25 books. Yes, so that's quite a lot, but honestly, I have unhauled 5 books, and those 5, I'm going to list them first. Those 5 are Illborn, because I own a duplicate of Illborn. One is signed, one is unsigned. So I unhauled the unsigned one. That way I have a space for one more book, and also it gives an opportunity for other reader to read the book. The same also goes for Assassin's Apprentice Illustrated Edition. I own 2 copies of Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb Illustrated Edition, and I unhauled an extra copy of it to other reader already. And the same also goes for 2 other books that I absolutely love, and those are The Trouble with Peace by Joe Abercrombie, which is the second book in the Age of Madness trilogy, and also The Empire's Ruin by Brian Staveley. In the case of The Empire's Ruin, I have to mention that I own 4 copies of The Empire's Ruin. That is overkill. I used to own 4 copies of The Empire's Ruin, 2 hardcover of the US edition and 2 hardcover of the UK edition. So I unhauled one of them. Now I still have 3 copies of The Empire's Ruin. And lastly, I already unhauled The God Is Not Willing by Steven Erikson, because again, I own 2 copies of The God Is Not Willing hardcover. I haven't read this one, and I plan to get to The God Is Not Willing hopefully within this year, but again, that is not a promise. I'm not sure whether I can get to this one within this year or not. So those are 5 books that I already unhauled earlier this year. Now I'm going to show you 20 books that I plan to unhaul before the end of the year. As you can probably tell from the first 5 that I just mentioned, most of them are duplicate, and most of the books that I'm going to show you soon are duplicates. So I'm going to show them first, and after that I'm going to show you 9 books that I'm going to unhaul even though they're not duplicates. So the first 3 that I'm going to unhaul, they are Red Rising Trilogy by Pierce Brown. Now, there is no way I'm unhauling these books unless they're duplicate. I absolutely love Red Rising Saga. Red Rising Saga by Pierce Brown is still my #1 favorite sci-fi series of all time, and I already own 3 copies of Red Rising and 2 copies of Golden Sun and Morning Star. So I'm going to unhaul these books. And then I also plan to unhaul Muse of Nightmares by Laini Taylor. I haven't read this one. I don't know whether I will love A Strange the Dreamer and also Muse of Nightmares or not. But again, I own 2 copies of Muse of Nightmares. One is actually signed, even though I got the book from Book Depository, and this one I also got from Book Depository, but this one is unsigned, and I plan to unhaul this one. Again, I don't need an extra copy of this book and plenty of other books. I own too many same copies for the same book. And the next one that I plan to unhaul is a book that I love, and this is one of the first sci-fi novel that I have ever read, and it is Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. I love Dark Matter and Recursion. Recursion by Blake Crouch, in my opinion, is still the best sci-fi standalone novels that I've read. And I haven't read Upgrade, the newest book by Blake Crouch yet. But again, I own 2 copies of Dark Matter, so I might as well unhaul a copy of this one. And the next one that I plan to unhaul, this is a graphic novel or a manhwa, and that is Solo Leveling Volume 2. So I already own 2 copies of Solo Leveling Volume 2. And yes, this was accidentally sent to me by Book Depository because I thought the first one they sent to me, which is this one, it won't arrive. But apparently it arrived after I requested to get an extra copy, or to get a replacement copy of Solo Leveling Volume 2. So now I have 2 copies of this one. And also, I love this manhwa series. I have read this manhwa series to its completion this month, and I loved it. Even though the ending could have been done better, but I will talk about that more on my wrap-up. The next 5 books I'm going to unhaul, these are all, well, not all, but I think in the future there are going to be duplicates, and they are all by Brandon Sanderson. Yes, if it's possible, I never want to unhaul Brandon Sanderson's books, but you know what? I'm going to do it for these 5. Hold on. First, Warbreaker, because as if some of you are caught up with my book haul videos, you might have seen that I already own a Dragonsteel edition of Warbreaker, and because of that, I'm going to unhaul this mass market paperback. And the same also goes for Alloy of Law. Yeah, this is a mass market paperback, and I know that the Dragonsteel edition hasn't been released yet, but I know that in the future I will end up owning a Dragonsteel edition of not only Alloy of Law, but most likely every Brandon Sanderson's books in the Cosmere. And that's why I'm unhauling all my paperback, except Mistborn Trilogy. I will never unhaul my copies of the Mistborn Trilogy, the first trilogy that I ever bought, the first set of books that I ever bought with my own money. But with that in mind, I'm also unhauling Shadows of Self after I read it this month. I already finished reading this one 6 years ago, but I plan to reread Shadows of Self this month, and after that I think I'm going to unhaul this book. And the same goes for The Bands of Mourning by Brandon Sanderson. This is the third book in Mistborn Wax and Wane. Shadows of Self was the second book, and yeah, I'm going to unhaul this one after I read The Bands of Mourning next month. Brandon Sanderson has announced that he and the team at Dragonsteel is going to release a Dragonsteel edition of the Alloy of Law and the Shadows of Self this year. And I don't think it will be too long before they're going to release one for the Bands of Mourning as well. It won't be fast for me to gain all the Dragonsteel editions because they are expensive. They are very expensive. But Brandon Sanderson is one of my top favorite authors of all time, and I know that I will end up owning, well, every one of them. And one more book by Brandon Sanderson that I'm going to unhaul is Elantris, the 10th anniversary edition. Elantris is probably the only book by Brandon Sanderson in this video that I'm going to unhaul that I must say that I didn't love. This one I didn't love. I think this is Brandon Sanderson's debut novel, and you can really tell that this is in fact his debut novel. Whether it's from his writing, his characterizations, everything just felt inferior compared to his, well, every books that he released after Elantris. In my opinion anyway. I know that some people disagree with me because they consider Elantris, well, to be one of their favorite books. But Elantris Dragonsteel edition is out now, and I haven't owned a copy of that one because I think Elantris Dragonsteel edition somehow doesn't look that appealing compared to, well, all the current Dragonsteel editions. But I think that's kind of understandable because Elantris was his debut novel, and it is also the first Dragonsteel edition, and I think they were still experimenting on some stuff when they're releasing that edition. Now, the next 9 books that I'm going to unhaul, none of them are duplicates. And again, if it's possible, as I said, I plan to keep them all, but that is not possible with how many books I keep on getting each month. And I'm not complaining about that, but I wish I have more space, but I don't. So yeah, the first 6 that I'm going to show you, these are books that I actually love, but I don't think I will be doing any second read of them anytime soon or ever. Plus, I already own an ebooks of them all on my Kindle, and they are the Powder Mage books by Brian McClellan, consisting of Promise of Blood, The Crimson Campaign, The Autumn Republic, Sins of Empire, Wrath of Empire, and also Blood of Empire. I'm going to be parting with these 6 books very soon. As I said, I actually love these books, especially Powder Mage Trilogy and Sins of Empire. But I must also mention that I'm quite disappointed with Wrath of Empire and also Blood of Empire. And after reading Blood of Empire, I really thought that, well, you know what, maybe this was just a one-time thing. Maybe Wrath of Empire and Blood of Empire just didn't click with me, and maybe his next future books will be books that I love again, just like the first Powder Mage Trilogy and Sins of Empire. So that's why I read his newest book, In the Shadows of Lightning. But somehow that book ended up being one of the most disappointing books by him. Maybe it is the weakest book by Brian McClellan that I've read. And because I didn't like reading Wrath of Empire, Blood of Empire, and also In the Shadow of Lightning, and because I didn't enjoy reading Wrath of Empire, Blood of Empire, and also In the Shadow of Lightning, that's 3 books in a row, well, I think it is time to say goodbye to these books. Then the next book that I'm going to unhaul, this is The Splinter King by Mike Brooks. This is the second book in the God King Chronicles, and I don't think I have any plan to read this one anytime soon, or probably ever, because I didn't really like reading the first book, and I received this one unsolicited. I didn't request for this book, and the publisher sent this book to me, which again, I'm always grateful when publishers send books to me. But in this particular case, I don't think, with how massive my TBR pile is, I don't think I will ever get the chance to read The Splinter King. Plus, I'm not really a fan of this cover art because this cover art is from Sekiro, the video game Sekiro by From Software Games. So it's just kind of weird for me to see Sekiro appearing in a fantasy book, even though it's not part of From Software Games. So yeah, it just feels off to me. And then I plan to unhaul The Misfit Soldier by Michael Meme. This is a book that I haven't read, but I already own an ebook of this one, and also this paperback. Well, it doesn't look good. I actually enjoyed reading the author's previous books, Planet Side and also Space Side, I think. The first two books by the same author, I enjoyed them, but I haven't read this one. And there's always the possibility that I will end up loving this one, considering how much I enjoyed reading the author's previous books. But again, I'm not a fan of the paperback copy of this one. It feels like it's trying to be a UK paperback, but at the same time, it is also like a mass market paperback. So yeah, I think I'm going to part way with this one and read The Misfit Soldier whenever I have the time from my Kindle. And lastly, the last book that I plan to unhaul this year, it is The Name of All Things by Jen Lyons. Also, this one is actually a duplicate, sorry for that. Yeah, I already own a hardcover copy of The Name of All Things, a book that I enjoyed. I think this one is much better than The Ruin of Kings, the first book in the series. So because I already own The Name of All Things in hardcover, I might as well unhaul The Name of All Things paperback edition. So that's 25 books that I plan to unhaul this year, which is, again, as I said, I'm not a fan of unhauling books, but sometimes it has to be done. Unfortunately, it has to be done. My space aren't infinite, and if it's possible, I never want to unhaul books. But I must also remember, rather than these books, duplicate books, or not, staying in my bookshelves as dust collectors, I think it's better for them to be in the hands of readers who might need them more, or who haven't read them and might end up loving them. I think that's even better. So yeah, right now, that's all the books that I plan to unhaul this year. And do let me know, do you unhaul books a lot, and do you ever feel guilty about it, and do you like doing it? I know that at the same time, even though I don't like doing book unhauling, it also, well, it feels kind of freeing because there are more space for books to appear on my bookshelves, and most probably I haven't read them and I might end up loving them. That's it from me today. Do let me know your thoughts on book unhauling, and as always, thank you so much for watching and thank you for your support. Bye bye. Lastly, I want to say thank you so much to my patrons who keep on supporting me.